Madison Reed has hair color that is gorgeous, salon quality, multi-dimensional, ammonia-free, and delivered to your door for less than $25. Visit madison-reed.com for 10% off plus free shipping on your first hair color kit with promo code FAMILY. That's code FAMILY.
You can support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/The Murder in My Family. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back for Season 2 of The Murder in My Family. In our last episode, Episode 10, we discussed the case of April Millsap, a 14-year-old girl who was murdered after leaving her home to walk her dog. The news of her murder devastated her mother, but thankfully, the case was solved and April's murderer was sentenced to a long prison sentence. In this episode, we talked to another heartbroken mother whose daughter was murdered after leaving home to go to the store, and sadly, this case remains unsolved and in limbo. California City in California is located in Kern County, about 65 miles from Death Valley. With a population of around 15,000 people, California City has a crime rate which is about 28% higher than the national average. Like many other cities across the U.S., drug use has played a role in some of the rising crime rates. Also, like many cities across the U.S., California City has been hit hard by a lack of money and resources, and this has directly affected the police and fire departments there. The result has been a feeling among area residents that they may not be as safe or protected as they would like to be. The police department was recently hit hard by 11 officers fleeing to take jobs with other departments. Things were so dire that unless a local tax known as Measure C wasn't passed, the police department would have dropped down to consisting of the police chief and 3 other officers. That's 4 officers to protect a city of 15,000 people 24/7 and to patrol the streets and investigate crimes. This has been the situation in recent years in the city. This is certainly not the best environment to investigate a murder. In fact, the California City Chief of Police was asked by a news reporter in June of 2018 if the city would become the Wild Wild West if Measure C wasn't approved. And his response was, quote, "It already is." Thankfully, the measure wound up being passed a month later in July of 2018. But it remains to be seen if the extra police resources will be enough to solve one of the most tragic cases in the recent history of California City, the 2016 murder of Deverrie Schiller. 23-year-old Deverrie Schiller, who had large green eyes and a big kind smile, lived with her mom Debbie in California City. She was the kind of girl that would leave an impression on you after meeting her. Although Deverrie came and went as she wanted, she spent much of her time at home helping Debbie with various medical conditions that she suffered from. Saturday, June 25th, 2016, was a very hot day in California City, with a high in the mid-90s. As time passed, and the scorching day gave way to a hot night, Deverrie was restless, and she wanted to get out of the house. She told her mom she was going to walk to a local store, and asked Debbie if she could use her truck to drive to Taco Bell when she got back. The Taco Bell was located almost 30 miles away in the town of Rosamond, but since Deverrie loved Taco Bell, she didn't mind the drive. Debbie told Deverrie that they could discuss it after she got back from the store, and Deverrie left the home headed for the store, accompanied by a male friend. This was between 9 and 10 p.m. Deverrie told her mom that she wouldn't be gone long. As she walked out the door, Debbie told her daughter that she loved her, and she had no idea at the time that she would never see her daughter alive again. As time passed, Debbie wasn't overly concerned that Deverrie hadn't returned. After all, her daughter was an adult, and Debbie was used to her daughter heading out for stretches of time. Debbie didn't worry too much about her daughter being out at night, because she considered her daughter to be what she called a badass. It was the next day, Sunday, when Debbie finally started to get worried that Deverrie hadn't returned, and it was about noon when her concern turned to outright panic. Deverie's grandmother sent a text to Debbie, letting her know that a body had been found in the park across the street from Debbie's house. Worried by the news, Debbie immediately began texting Deverrie, but got no response. Debbie didn't want to accept that the body found in the park might be Deverie's, so she decided to drive to some of Deverie's friends' homes to see if anybody had seen her daughter. But she had no luck, and soon returned to her house. It wasn't long after arriving back home that there was a knock on her door. A knock that no parent ever wants to hear. The police were at Debbie's front door, and they were there to inform Debbie that the body found in the park was indeed Deverie's. The devastating news immediately sent Debbie into shock. Some young boys playing near the park had discovered Deverie's body lying in a dirt alleyway that ran between two fenced-in areas along the edge of the park. One of the boys raced home to tell a family member about what they had found, and the family member accompanied the child back to the crime scene. This person then called police to alert them about the body and waited for police to arrive at the scene. While waiting, the caller did the unthinkable and snapped one or more photos of Deverie's body. Police arrived on the scene and determined that the body was that of Deverrie Schiller. Later, the cause of death would be determined to be strangulation. Not many details were disclosed by police about the murder or what clues, if any, they have. In fact, it took investigators several months to fully interview the male friend, who was the last person known to be with Deverrie. It's not known if the friend is considered a person of interest. Sadly, it wasn't long before the photos of Deverie's body wound up making their way onto local social media, and Debbie, still grieving over Deverie's murder, stumbled upon the image. As if the knowledge of what happened to Deverrie wasn't bad enough, Debbie now knows what it actually looked like. Fortunately, the photos were removed from social media, but the damage was done. As time passed with no arrest, Debbie found herself searching for the truth behind her daughter's murder, all the while continuing to battle multiple health issues. But that didn't stop the heartbroken mother. She thought of new ways to bring attention to the case. She had a friend lay in the spot where Deverie's body was found to simulate the crime scene. In 2018, Debbie was inspired for her next idea to bring attention to the case by the movie 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. In the movie, an angry and grieving mother, unsatisfied with the lack of an arrest in her daughter's murder, rents space on local billboards in her town to voice her frustration with police. Debbie thought that this was a great idea and decided to create signs of her own on behalf of her daughter's case. The 3 signs were all positioned one after the other so that passing motorists could read them all. The first sign read, "Busting illegal grow houses is good." The second sign read, "Busting a killer would be better." The third and final sign read, "Dev Schiller, 1092 to 616, murdered, unsolved." The sign about busting illegal grow houses was a reference to the town's big drug bust of an illegal marijuana grow operation. While that was big news, it wasn't the news that Deverie's mother, Debbie, was waiting for. She was hoping that the police would catch the person that killed her daughter. And while Debbie isn't trying to shame the police in any way, she knows that the signs have generated continued interest in news coverage in her daughter's case. Despite all of Debbie's efforts to keep Deverie's case in the spotlight over the past 2 years, there has been no arrest, and if police are closing in on any suspects, they're doing it quietly. Debbie joined me to talk about Deverie's murder, as well as her own journey to find justice for her daughter. That discussion is next, after this quick break, for our sponsor, Madison Reed.